Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens, Chapter 5, The Little House. The little house in the Kensington Gardens is the only house in the whole world that the fairies have built for humans. But no one has really seen it. You only see it if you sleep in it. This is because it's not there when you lie down, but it is there when you wake up and step outside. The house was first built for Mamie Mannering. Mamie was 4 years old. She was quite ordinary in the daytime, but at night, when sent to bed, she would scare her 6-year-old brother Tony by pretending that something with horns was going to attack his bed. Tony told Mamie that one day he was going to stay behind in Kensington Gardens after the gates were closed. "Perhaps Peter Pan will give you a sail in his boat," said Mamie. "I shall make him," replied Tony. One afternoon, when the gardens were white with snow, Tony and Mamie arrived at the gardens with their nanny. They saw that the fairies had changed the closing time of the gardens for a fairy ball. Mamie thought that today would be a great day for Tony to stay in the gardens. "Is it today?" she asked him, and Tony nodded. So Mamie took off her scarf and kindly gave it to him, in case you should feel cold, she whispered. Mamie pretended to race Tony to the gate so that he could hide, but she got a shock when instead of hiding, her hero brother ran right out of the gate. She was disappointed that her brother had been a coward, so she hid herself instead. She shut her eyes and didn't open them until she heard the clang, clang, clang of the gates closing. Immediately an elm tree began to stretch out its arms and yawned, and then Mamie saw other tall trees doing the same thing. She told the trees she would like to go to the fairy ball. The trees warned her that if the fairies saw her, they might do mean things to her. She learned that the fairies were not in a very good mood at the moment because the Duke of Christmas Daisies could not fall in love with anyone. Mamie followed a red ribbon to the bridge over a dry puddle into which a fairy had fallen and was unable to climb out. At first the fairy was afraid of Mamie, but when Mamie began to help her, she told Mamie her name was Brownie. She said she was on her way to the ball to see if the Duke would have her. She was worried that the Duke would not like her and was thinking about not even trying. Mamie reassured her that she should and made her feel better. Brownie told Mamie not to follow her to the ball, but Mamie was curious. She followed Brownie and peered from behind a tree. She was disappointed not to see Peter Pan, who was late because his boat was stuck in ice on the Serpentine. She watched ladies burst into tears as they were told the Duke didn't love them. Mamie watched her fairy friend Brownie go before the Duke and his doctor. The doctor put his finger on the Duke's heart. "What's this?" he cried. Then he put his ear to the heart. "Good gracious me!" the doctor cried before informing everyone that the Duke was in love with Brownie. How the crowd cheered and leapt! Trumpets played, and the moon came out, and all the fairies started dancing. And then Mamie went and spoiled everything. She couldn't help it. She was so happy for her friend, so she took several steps forward and said, "Oh, Brownie, how wonderful!" Everybody stood still. The music stopped and the lights went out. Mamie heard the murmur of angry voices and suddenly realized the danger she was in. She screamed and fled. She ran until she could run no more and fell asleep in the snow. As the new Duchess, Brownie begged Queen Mab not to hurt Mamie. After hearing how Mamie had helped Brownie, the Queen wanted to thank Mamie. The fairies followed Mamie's footsteps through the snow. They could not wake her up or carry her to a more sheltered spot, and they were worried she might die from the cold, so they cleared the snow off her and built a beautiful house around her. The house was exactly the size of Mamie, with windows, a front door, hot and cold water, and a chimney on the roof. Outside there was a flower garden with blooming roses and a vegetable garden. All through the night the house took care of Mamie while she was sleeping, and she woke up feeling cozy. She thought she was at home and called out for Tony. As Tony didn't answer, she sat up and hit her head on the roof, which opened like the lid of a box. She was amazed to see Kensington Gardens all around her, lying deep in snow. She stepped out of the roof and looked at the beautiful house, which immediately began to shrink. It shrank down to nothing. Mamie stamped her foot and was just putting her fingers to her eyes when she heard a kind voice say, "Don't cry, pretty human, don't cry." She turned around and saw a beautiful little boy. She knew at once that he must be Peter Pan.